Money feels like a single game when you're inside it. You earn some, you spend some, you try to save a little, and if you're lucky, it grows. That's the version most people see. But once you zoom out, you realize something unsettling. Rich people aren't just better at the same game. They're playing an entirely different one, with different rules, different objectives, and different ways to win. Imagine two people standing on the same chessboard. One is moving pawns, counting squares, hoping not to lose. The other is rearranging the board itself. Same board, same pieces, completely different reality. Let's start at ground level. If you're broke or just getting by, money is about survival. Rent, food, transportation, bills. Every dollar has a job, and if one disappears, something else breaks. Money is reactive. You don't tell it where to go, it tells you. Unexpected expenses feel like ambushes. A flat tire isn't an inconvenience, it's a crisis. At this level, the game is about staying alive long enough to make it to next month. Now move up a little. Once your basics are covered, money becomes about stability. You start budgeting. You plan. You worry about interest rates, credit scores, and emergency funds. This is where most financial advice is aimed. Save more, spend less, be responsible. And it works, up to a point. But notice something strange. Even when you do everything right, progress feels slow. You're running, but the scenery barely changes. That's because you're still playing the income game. The income game is simple. You trade time for money. Hours in, dollars out. Even if you're highly paid, the structure stays the same. Stop working, and the money stops. Promotions help, raises help, but the ceiling is always there, quietly waiting. Rich people exit this game early. They don't ask, how much do I make per hour? They ask, what do I own that makes money without me? Ownership is the first rule change. When you own nothing, money moves one direction, from employer to you, from you to everyone else. When you own assets, money loops back. Businesses pay dividends, properties collect rent, stocks grow while you sleep, royalties arrive whether you're productive or not. The rich don't earn more because they work harder. They earn more because they positioned themselves to get paid repeatedly for the same effort. This is why time feels different to them. For most people, time is scarce. Every hour spent resting feels like an hour not earning. For the rich, time is leverage. They can wait. They can delay gratification, not because they're disciplined, but because delay itself makes them richer. Compound growth rewards patience more than effort. Time isn't something they sell, it's something they deploy. This leads to the second rule change: risk. Poor people experience risk as danger. One bad move can wipe them out. That makes sense. If losing $5,000 means losing housing, you avoid risk at all costs. Rich people experience risk as variance. A bad outcome hurts, but it doesn't end them. That changes behavior completely. Because risk isn't avoided, it's managed. Rich people take risks constantly, but they size them carefully. Small downside, massive upside. They diversify. They fail often, but cheaply. Meanwhile, the poor are forced into the most risky position of all, having no buffer. Ironically, avoiding risk at the bottom is what locks people into the most fragile state. Now let's talk about taxes, because this is where the game visibly splits. Most people earn income, get taxed immediately, then try to live on what's left. Rich people do the opposite. They grow assets first, then decide if and when income happens. Borrowing against assets isn't taxable. Unrealized gains aren't taxable. Losses can offset profits. Depreciation can turn real cash flow into paper losses. The result looks like magic until you realize the trick. Taxes aren't just a rate, they're a timing problem. If you control timing, you control taxation. That's why rich people care so much about structure. Trusts, Corporations, holding companies, foundations. These aren't exotic tools, they're containers. Containers change how money is seen by the system. The same dollar looks very different depending on what box it's sitting in. This is also why financial advice sounds fake to people who are struggling. Just invest. With what money? Be patient. While bills pile up? Think long term. When survival is short term? It's not that the advice is wrong, it's that it assumes you're already in the other game. Now let's zoom out further. Rich people don't optimize for price, they optimize for control. They pay for speed, they pay for convenience, they pay to remove friction. Groceries delivered, assistants handling logistics, lawyers managing problems before they appear. Time saved gets reinvested into decisions that matter. Poor people save money by spending time. Rich people save time by spending money. Over decades, this gap compounds brutally. This also explains why rich people seem calm during chaos. Market crash, opportunity. Recession, discounts. Uncertainty, optionality. When you have margin, volatility becomes useful. When you don't, it's terrifying. There's another subtle rule change. Information. Most people consume news. Rich people commission insight. They don't wait for headlines, they pay for data, models, and analysis. Sometimes that data is financial, sometimes it's behavioral, sometimes it's as simple as knowing who is hiring, who is quitting, and who is quietly moving money. Information asymmetry isn't about secrets, it's about early signals. By the time something is obvious to everyone, the advantage is gone. This is why rich people often look wrong before they look right. They move early, absorb skepticism, then let reality catch up. Meanwhile, the average person waits for certainty, which is another word for too late. Now let's talk about status, because it matters more than people like to admit. Money doesn't just buy things, it buys access. Access to rooms, conversations, deals, and people who move resources. Rich people meet other rich people not by accident, but by proximity. Schools, clubs, boards, conferences. Opportunities don't circulate on job boards at that level. They circulate through trust networks. This is why networking advice feels vague. It's not about collecting contacts, it's about being seen as someone who plays the same game. And this brings us to the most uncomfortable difference. Rich people think in systems. Poor people are forced to think in events. An unexpected bill, a bad month, a lucky break. Everything feels episodic. Rich people zoom out. They expect randomness. They design systems that survive it. Automated investing, recurring revenue, redundant income streams, legal insulation, insurance on top of insurance. The goal isn't perfection, it's resilience. Even failure looks different. When rich people fail, it's often invisible. A project gets shut down. A bet doesn't work. Money disappears quietly. When poor people fail, it's loud. Credit scores drop. Evictions happen. Stress spills everywhere. Same word, radically different consequences. Now here's the part most people miss. This isn't about intelligence. It's not about morality. It's not even about effort. It's about position. Once you cross a certain threshold, money stops behaving linearly. It starts behaving like gravity. It pulls more money towards itself. Returns accelerate. Options expand. Mistakes soften. The rules don't change because rich people are special. They change because the system rewards scale. That's the game. And the final twist is most rich people didn't figure this out in a single moment. They learned it slowly, often accidentally, by crossing thresholds. First asset, first investment that worked, first time money arrived without effort. Once that happens, your brain rewires. You stop asking how to earn more and start asking how to own better. So why do rich people play a different game? Because at a certain point, the old one stops working. Income caps out, effort plateaus, time runs out, And the only way forward is to stop pushing harder and start positioning smarter. The tragedy is that most people never get to see this game from the inside. They're told to grind harder inside a system that quietly limits them, not because the system is evil, but because it was never designed for everyone to win the same way. But understanding the difference matters, because once you see that the game is different, you stop blaming yourself for losing at a table you were never meant to sit at. And more importantly, you can start making moves that bring you closer to the board where the real game is being played. Not overnight, not magically, but deliberately. Because money doesn't just reward work, it rewards position, patience, and ownership. And that's the game the rich are actually playing.